can start rolling whenever you want to as well. But yeah, yesterday I like jumped in. She came in, and I could just feel my head was just like spinning,
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I've just been super busy with the podcast and like my 9 to 5 and going towards one of your essays of I'm trying to remember which one it was, but distractions.
Mm.
There was one I actually laughed at towards the end of the introduction paragraph, and I want to pull it up right now because it really it speaks to me right now because I've been in a headspace where I'm putting too much into my purview.
Mm.
Like it's a combination of social media, but maybe you even like refine that, and it's just books, and you're just constantly reading the next book and the next book and the next article.
Right.
And yeah, the beginning paragraph of Recovering Your Genius.
Okay.
Wake up, check Instagram, then email, coffee, headphones in, what's the news, Twitter, head to work, Slack meeting, coffee, Zoom, lunch at your desk, coffee, number 3, Slack, gym, Instagram, finish that podcast, check your email, check it again, dinner, Netflix, Instagram while watching Netflix.
Yeah.
A little dessert, read a few pages of your book, email in bed to make sure there are no last minute emergencies. Lay awake and briefly allow yourself to feel the crushing gravity of your eventual death. Go to sleep. I giggled when you, that last part.
Yeah.
And, we met at MetaMen, and I don't think I even spoke to you like at all throughout the entire day.
No, it was just at the very end. Yeah.
Yeah. And Matt was,
emphatic that we met.
Yeah. He was like, dude, Shane, I know you're going to love Zach, and he'd be a great guest to have on. And you seem like a fascinating human being that's been traveling for years, according to your Instagram.
Yeah.
And then your writing is fantastic. I read a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was saying over at the Hive, your writing has hard-hitting points and insights that provides simple and concise orchestration. And I think that is a signal of someone that is a great writer, in my view, at least, because some writers can use just too many words, extravagant words. And so, yeah, man, I'm happy to have you on. Thank you for coming. Well, first of all, before we dive into your essays and like the lessons that you've learned over the course of the that article was over the course of like the year, or maybe within the 32 years of your life, I think. What made you want to move to Austin?
Yeah, that one's kind of complicated. And I don't have a great answer for it. I've been trying to figure out what the actual answer is for it.
Sure.
A lot of it had to do with moving away from San Francisco. For me and my partner, it just wasn't in the cards. It's a really beautiful place, but
it's been evolving.
Yeah, in the end, it just wasn't for where we are in our life right now. It wasn't really what we wanted. Like if I worked in tech, and if I was 25 years old and I wanted to be a billionaire, like those are all the things that I would live there. But I'm 32. I'm in a long-term relationship. I want to have a house. I want to have kids. So that just wasn't a thing there. So we started looking around for places where that was a thing. And I was really attracted to Austin for the same reason that I'm seeing a lot of other people were, which is just the people. So a lot of people that I was reading online, a lot of people that I thought were very thoughtful were living here, and I just didn't understand why. So I figured, let's go figure it out. Visited here like 4 times last year. So we came during like this like insane summer. We came in the beautiful spring. And now I've experienced the 17-degree winter. So I've seen pretty much all of it, and I've been meeting somebody new every single day since I got here. So I'm kind of understanding that I think I made the right decision.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't have the clearest reason why in the beginning.
That's a big challenge to meet someone new every single day.
Yeah.
How have you been doing that?
So sourced a lot of them from just online.
Mm.
I think I've now hit like perfect peak social media for me, where I try not to consume it at all, and I use it to meet people in real life. Whereas before it was like a lot of meeting people on social media and it just kind of stayed there. It's like, okay, I met you. How quickly can I get this offline and see you face to face? So it's been working out really, really well. A lot of inbound since I moved here. And then just recently I've started to be like, okay, who are some of the people that I want to meet? So I'll shoot my shot with somebody who's, I think, is like a little bit above, like who would probably say no to me.
Yeah.
And the surprising thing is like, they don't say no. It's pretty, which is wild.
So are you using Instagram? Are you using email, or just a combination of all?
Twitter seems to, I've figured that one out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And what are some of the takeaways of trying to, so moving to a city in Austin, typically people kind of plug themselves into work environments, but also maybe like the gym and then mingle their way through, but being intentional and trying to meet someone and just like meeting them one-on-one. For some people that might be intimidating, but that's really, I think, the best way to, maybe not the best way, but like, that's not the phrase or word, but maybe it is like the optimal way to just, insert yourself into different demographics and get to plug in and have a one-on-one, more intimate conversation with someone. What are some of the biggest like takeaways you've gotten from meeting someone every day has it been like 30
It's been
days?
At least 40 days now.
40 days.
So the original challenge was 30 days, and I've like absolutely blown that out of the park. There was a lot of days where I would do doubles. There was a lot of days where I would meet, like I had like 16 people over my house yesterday. I don't count that as 16. I count that as one. Yeah. Right. So I've met an obscene amount of people. And I've had a lot of one-on-ones, at least 40 one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And so that's actually something that I'm writing about right now. I'm trying to distill what are the things. So something that I've been hating lately is the word vibes. I hate that word because
I think I just said it.
Yeah, no, you did. It's okay. I used to say it a lot too until I just realized that vibes is, it's just kind of lazy. It's kind of like, I don't want to take the time to articulate how I really feel. So I'm just going to put it into this big just bucket of their essence. Right. It's like saying like, it's like, this food is yummy. This food is yucky. It's like, well, why? Like, do you like, is the reason that you like this dessert because it's like this rich, dark chocolate with like a crunchy sea salt, and that's something you're really attracted to, is the contrast of salt and chocolate, right? That's somebody who has refined their ability to describe things, right? And so I'm like, okay, I want to refine my ability to describe people and why I'm attracted to people. And so I can dig a little bit deeper into it when I'm experiencing it, right? So I can go into what I think good vibes means for me when I'm meeting somebody new. One of the things would be like a playfulness, like our ability to like kind of razz each other, just little tiny like poke fun at each other. It just signals that there's an openness and a willingness to kind of like play ball, and that you're not taking yourself too seriously, and that you're just kind of another one for me would be a curiosity, that they are interested in different things, and those things don't have to be the same things that I'm interested in, but I'm attracted to people who are willing to go deep into something, and are willing to do that thing. So for instance, somebody that I think about, one of the people that I met, I just walked up to him at a coffee shop, and he was reading this old-timey 1950s book on woodworking, right? And I was just like, that's really different. And that's actually really deep too, because to get to this 1950s book on woodworking, it suggests that you probably went through some of the new ones and you realized that the new ones weren't that great. So you wanted to see an old one, and has these great illustrations. And he went into all these reasons why he loved this book specifically. So I'm attracted to people who go deep into something. I'm also attracted to people who do things that they don't have to do, right? So it's like you have your 9 to 5, you have your job, whatever. What do you do outside of that you're really passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
It could also be your 9 to 5. It could be the same topic, or it could be something entirely different. But it's that it's kind of like you're a doer, right? Whether you make money on that or whatever, doesn't matter. Like some of my favorite people are like people who've published like 100 podcasts that no one's ever listened to, and they do not care at all, and they're just going to keep going. Like it's just so attractive to me, right? Those are the things that come to mind immediately of what makes an attractive conversation, because the way that I've actually been thinking about these past 30 days is that they're not 30 meetings, they're 30 first dates that I'm going on with people. Because my goal is to get a second date with all of these people. And obviously some of them are not going to work out because we don't connect, just like a date. But the ones that do, you're like, oh, this has the potential of turning into a friendship. And that's what I want. Like there's no ask. There's no ask at the end of these. There's no, I need a job, or I need this, or I'm looking for whatever. I'm not looking for anything. I'm looking for friends because I just moved to Austin. I don't know anybody, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's, so I'm trying to get better with my speech and my dialogue and the words that I use. And obviously it's something that I value because I do a podcast. So I'm trying to articulate my speech more thoughtfully and more artistically. But I do tend to say essence and vibe because I've gotten into the spiritual exploration and trying to describe those.
Indescribable. Like, how do you describe the ineffable, right?
Which is very difficult. And so I'm practicing that. Which is fun. But at the same time, it's like challenging because like I'm doing it publicly and I'm not a big podcast. So but even if I was, like it's okay. It's okay to like put yourself in the unknown and show that you're learning and not be afraid to do that.
I just saw myself falling back on the word too much. That's all I'm saying.
I love that. And I've actually, because I do I do my own editing I do all the back end stuff pretty much, which is fine. Totally cool with it for now, but eventually automating and then having more mental bandwidth or space would be nice. But I'm able to not harshly or over critically judge my speech and my performance. And I can see when I'm overusing words and coming back to topics that I've talked about in previous conversations. And it challenges you to say, okay, like what can I bring into this conversation without really being overly repetitive from previous episodes, engaging the guests and also engaging people that are listening, which is not easy. And so you've had these meetings with 30 to 40 different people every single day. If you were to think of the first person out of these 40 people, what's one of the more interesting or fascinating or creative parts of the conversations that you've had?
Oh,
because Austin's a pretty interesting city. It's got various segments of demographics like tech and fitness and spirituality, and there's athletic performance as well.
So can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to reflect upon all 40 of the conversations, one that engaged you and stimulated you and challenged you the most, that really surprised you, what would that be?
So the one that I can think of was because I'm writing quite a bit, I'll get stuck on an idea. Like I'll be thinking about this idea for a long time, and I'll kind of want to bring it up with people. And it's something that, like, imagine an idea that you've been thinking of for the past 2, 3, 4 weeks, that you've been going really, really deep into, that you know a lot about. And you share it with somebody, and then you can kind of see it like hit and then just die. Like they're just like, I have nothing to contribute, or I have no interest in this. But then when somebody takes to it, you can really jam. So something that I've been writing about and thinking about a lot lately is beauty. And so I brought this up in a conversation, and this person turned out to be another writer. And she was so willing to play ball and so willing to contribute like different ideas that I have never had and challenge the like thesis of the entire argument that I'm making. And it was just this really great like back and forth. So I think more than the specifics on beauty, it was this, there's something that I care about that I have been researching like quite a bit, and I'm going to share that with you. Like, are you willing to engage with that, or are you just going to kind of be like a drywall, like, and just absorb it and then deflect it or whatever, you know? So that conversation I thought was, that one really brought me alive. And that person has ended up being like a third, fourth, fifth date kind of person. Like we'll probably be best friends.
Cool.
Yeah.
And on the topic of beauty and the contents of your conversation, we don't have to get too far into it, but how did that go?
Great. Look, she brought up a few other ideas that I haven't really considered. I mean, the entire, the macro thesis on this is like, the macro question rather is beauty subjective or objective, right? So a lot of people think that beauty is subjective, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so I've been challenging myself to make the point that the opposite is true, right? That maybe that there is some objective beauty. And people always, whenever I say beauty, they immediately go to like physical looks of people. And that's not necessarily what I'm talking about.
Sculptures, paintings.
Yes, sculptures, paintings, architecture, natural beauty, all of these different things that you're naturally attracted to. And see, I even said it that naturally attracted to, which suggests that there is this innate attraction that we all feel towards certain things. And that's the kind of point that I'm trying to make here. And so we went a little bit into like, I mean, you can't talk about beauty without talking about religion. You can't talk about beauty without talking about natural beauty or like Mona Lisa or Michelangelo, like his Sistine Chapel. And then when you're talking about that, you're talking about patronage. And so she brought up some really interesting things about patronage that we were talking about.
So what would you say to art being objective? Like, how would you defend that statement?
I think that beauty is a signal. It's an adaptive signal for us to move towards things, right? So you see this really beautiful, big, red, juicy apple on a tree, contrasted against the green leaves of a tree, right? You're like, I want to go towards that because going towards that will bring me nourishment, right? And it's like, what came first? Like the nourishment probably came first, and then the pattern matching of, oh, big, red, beautiful apple came second. And the people who ate the disgusting apple, the one that's moldy and that smells bad and that's misshapen, they died. Or they didn't get enough nutrients, right? So it became disadvantageous to us to go up to those things, almost and even repulsive, right? So an ugly apple, we are repulsed by. So these are natural signals in our environment to move towards or to move away, right? And then you can see these things in like why our church is so beautiful. Why is the house of God so beautiful, right? Because it is the signal of move closer, right? It's like, get closer to this thing. You can never, and we can go really deep into this, but you can never attain it, right? And so it's that like the beauty of the divine, right? So of the house of God can never be attained by a mortal, right? But it gives us that same innate desire to strive towards it, right? To better ourselves. So I think that beauty is probably one of the most important things that can exist, period. Because that is our internal compass of where we should move towards, right? And the same thing goes for ugliness of this is our internal compass of where to move away. So a lot of people, whenever I bring this up with somebody, they will definitely argue me on that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but then I will bring up ugliness, right? And then I'll say, I'll list off a few things that are objectively ugly and that things people really would move away from. And it doesn't have to just be physical things. It can be ideas too. There are some really ugly ideas in the world, right? And those are repulsive. And those are very universal, that we move away from those. So if there are universal things that repel us, then there must be universal things that attract us. First thing I always go towards is a sunset, right? It's like nobody says, oh my God, that sunset's so gross. Like get me away from that, right? It's like there's a weird natural magnetism.
Let me push back a little bit on that.
Please.
So what if, someone had a traumatic
Sunset?
some traumatic sunset, like they're on the beach and they're harmed and some
Right.
like, traumatic PTSD happened. So every time they see a sunset in the eye of the beholder, it's not beautiful to them, even though it radiates beauty to most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something, just my gut towards that is like that, like you can layer, I guess you can layer culture on top of like our natural instincts. So and culture, I mean by like things that happen in society or to you specifically. I think that the ultimate assertion that I'm trying to make is that beauty is objective and it is also subjective. So there are elements of it that are subjective, and that we, with untrained taste, cannot tell what the things are that are beautiful or that are not beautiful. But there are people who, with trained taste, can tell us. So the example that I think of is there's a reason that Gordon Ramsay is the judge of all of these cooking shows, right? It's because we say, okay, Gordon, you have eaten way more than we have. You have made like top-notch food.
Yeah.
We have not done that. So I'm going to outsource my perception of what's good and bad to you. But so with food, that's very easy for us. But with other things, we get offended and we go, well, my taste is just as good as anybody else's of this art. You can't tell me that the art that I like is bad, But it's like our actions are showing otherwise. The way that we outsource our opinions to judges, right? Yeah. So I think that unless you're willing to put in the Gordon Ramsay level work to build up a taste, you should outsource your opinions on beauty to somebody else. But I think that we all should strive towards understanding beauty a bit more and building a more beautiful world. Massive tangent, right?
I think of I've had a recent guest that studies the laws of hermetics, which I am not an expert in, but there are a few laws that I've generally looked into. And this is kind of like duality and the law of polarization and two sides to everything, like the feminine and the masculine. And so I think that we could speak to this forever.
Yeah.
Whether it's objective or subjective.
Yeah.
And I've seen pieces of art that, according to like the symmetrical aspects to the art, it makes it more beautiful than like someone that just like splatters paint in random ways. But different people have a different lens. And so it's a very interesting topic. So to come back to where, we were originally speaking to, so we went from beauty, and then before that was the people that you've had conversations with since you've moved here. What do you, for work, what are you practicing? So I think I saw, you're obviously writing, but you were doing like so your website is called Startup Social.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you wanted to get into that and how you were orchestrating that in San Francisco and potentially here as well.
Yeah, I'm still doing it in San Francisco.
Okay.
So the newsletter that you read is a component of that, and I can explain how it fits in later. But what Startup Social is effectively 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I moved to San Francisco. Didn't know a single person. It was still kind of like in that COVID-y period where people were afraid to kind of see each other. They were getting comfortable seeing each other outside. But I didn't know anybody, and I didn't really know how to meet anyone. Yeah. So I had some girlfriends there who were like, oh, try Bumble BFF. And Bumble BFF for guys in San Francisco didn't really work in the same way. It was still kind of like a dating app. So for the first time ever, I was like, I've heard of Meetup. I've never been to one and I've never posted one, but like, I'm just going to go for it. Let's throw something up there, see what happens. And I was already spending a lot of time in my local park, just right outside my house.
Yeah.
You just kind of grab a picnic blanket, do like a little brunch thing. And I was like, all right, I'll just I'll invite some people to come and do this brunch with me that I'm already going to do. So if nobody shows up, it's not a bust. So I posted it, and then I'm just like monitoring it, and it's like 5 people signed up. I'm like, I can't believe it. This is crazy. 5 people are going to come have brunch with me. And then it got closer, and it's like 20 people are signed up.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a big brunch. And then it was like 70 people are signed up. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm getting a little scared, right? I'm like, I really don't know what to do here. This is probably too many. And then like day before, 100 people are signed up. And
wow.
Yeah. And so I just like get my picnic blanket. I bought a few bottles of wine and bought some chips and stuff. And like, really surprisingly to me, everybody kind of brought their own thing and contributed. So. And it became like this monster, this huge thing, like 25 picnic blankets, 100 people, like 30 bottles of wine. It was wild. It was absolutely crazy. And I was just like, I was blown away. And then towards the end of it, somebody goes, when's the next one? And I'm like, what are you talking about? There is no next one. And they were like, you should definitely do this again. And I go, all right. So I just kind of like posted another one next weekend, and then another one the next weekend, another one the next weekend. And this just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew till last year, when I was doing an event every other week for the entire year. So I did at least 52 events last year. And I alternated between these very, very large startup focused mixers and private intimate dinners.
Okay.
I hosted every single one of those. And now Startup Social in San Francisco is being run by some like my best friends and like the diehards. So like the people who have been to, 10, 20 events who really understand what's going on.
Okay. This is now a like full-fledged company where you have employees.
Yeah. This is a business. Yeah.
Wow.
So the entire first year that I did this, it was entirely for free. And I'm like, if I charge, it will ruin it. Like, I don't want to be prohibitive to anybody. I want this to be completely open. I don't like when I see other people charging for these events, right?
Okay.
And after year 1, my girlfriend's like, you need to start making money. And I'm like, no, that's going to ruin everything. She's like, Zach, you need to make money. You can't just do this forever for free. I go, okay, fine. I'll charge $5 and you can send it to me over Venmo. And like, if they don't send me those $5, I'll still let you in. Right. And that was actually a really pivotal moment in the business. 1, that's when it became a real business. And 2, I learned so much about charging and about buy-in and about people's behavior, and how copywriting like influences purchases and how it influences how people show up and the quality of the experience. Like all of this is really tied to money and buy-in specifically. So when I started charging people $5, my event attendance did not go down, which I thought it would. I thought it would kill it. And the show up rate went to about 90% from about 30%. So it was extremely flaky in the beginning. And then it was like, with as little as $5, people were almost guaranteed to show up.
Improved it.
Improved the quality of the entire organization immeasurably.
Yeah, I think that's because of the financial commitment. It's like, well, I paid for this, so I should go. And if you don't go, it's like, oh, I wasted money. Okay. And so how has it evolved where you have employees now?
Oh, I don't have employees. I have volunteers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, that's another like fascinating element of this whole thing is that I don't pay for anything, like ever. Like there are virtually no business expenses. I try and keep it as close to zero as possible because in this like event game, and you'll see that there's a few like really key players that are doing more or less a flavor of what I'm doing in every major city. And the way that most people do it is with sponsorships. And sponsorships for me have not worked out because of a few things. Like one, I think that it's a shorter term play, specifically as the event host, because you've already created this kind of weird like timeshare, like I'm going to set you up. I'm going to get this room filled with people, and then they're going to give you this big long pitch, and you're just going to have to watch it, right? And then that immediately erodes trust of like we became the product kind of thing. Like when like Facebook switched, and then you realize like, oh, this isn't about social media. This is about them getting me to watch ads, right?
Yeah.
It's very much the same in the event space. So I'm definitely the ad-free paid version of events.
Okay.
And by doing that, I'm allowed to make them about anything I want. So the next one that I'm hosting in San Francisco is about kindness. So it's a bunch of startup founders, a bunch of venture capitalists coming into a room, and their icebreaker is, what's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you? It isn't what you do for work. It isn't how much money you're trying to raise or what industry you're in. It's what's the kindest thing somebody's ever done for you? Who else can make their event about that? Can the most well-funded venture firm afford to throw a $30,000 event that's about kindness? No. It has to convert for them, right? So mine is this super long-term play. Yes, I make money on tickets, but it's the quality of the relationship is entirely different.
Okay.
And then I guess you could probably see how this very easily translates to what the newsletter is about. Because the newsletter is called Startup Social, yet I never talk about startups, right? I never talk about raising money. I never talk about AI or Apple Vision Pro. Like, I talk about values.
Yeah.
Right? So
I think that's why I was attracted to it.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
It's not weird. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I don't think anybody else is. I do get emails like, what the hell am I signed up for? Like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And
like it with a distaste?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Yes. Where it's like, I wanted to go to a tech event.
Just unsubscribe. Why do you have to say that?
They do.
You know?
They do. I mean, so that's actually part of it too. So the purpose, so every few weeks, it's like every 3 or 4 weeks, I throw a 500 person mixer, right, in San Francisco. And that's my top of funnel for the business. So that means 500 people come into it. It's about 50% new every single time. So I get 250 new email addresses, and then they're immediately signed up into the newsletter. And the newsletter, they see it comes through. You've seen like the welcome email. It's very, very different. And it's all about values. Like I have one that's about how I lost $2 million, one that's about suicide, one that's about, like taking aim, and one that's about like how sometimes it's better to relinquish that like an effortful life and kind of go with the flow, right? Yeah. Go where you're naturally being pulled. All things that really ambitious startup founders don't want to hear, right? So a lot of them unsubscribe. But the ones who stay and the ones who read, 15, 20, 30, 50 of the posts, they're my diehard group. They're my core group. And then usually lower in the funnel is the startup dinners. Like they're I think the smallest group we've ever done is 8 people. The largest was 32 people. And those are about really intimate, like deeper connections.
Yeah.
So I try and get everyone aligned through the newsletter to those dinners. And then ultimately there will be even more and more.
Cool. And I'm assuming you're going to assimilate that into Austin.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like yet. And that's part of why I'm meeting with so many people.
Yeah.
It's because I'm trying to see, okay, what does this ecosystem look like? What are people already doing? There's already a lot of event organizers. I don't think that there's anybody that's doing exactly what I do. So I don't know if it'll have to change that much. But here, people are extremely intentional about gathering. And I really, really appreciate that.
What are the big contrasts that you're starting to see in comparison to San Francisco and the people that you're meeting here?
That people are so thoughtful about the experience itself.
Oh, okay.
So in San Francisco, most events are, they're like a little cringy. They're like a massive, well-funded tech company will spend tens of thousands of dollars to rent out a gigantic space and feed 500 people Domino's pizza and Coke and Sprite and whatever, or they'll have an open bar, and it will just be all about their tech startup. It'll be AWS saying, use our service, or it'll be some massive company trying to sell you on their thing, right? So that has nothing to do with about the experience design for the people who come there. They're not thinking about how are these people going to interact with each other? How are these people going to interact with our brand? It's just, I want to get eyeballs in person on my thing, right? And then you'll see so many of these brands go, events don't work. Events don't convert. And I just laugh all the time because I'm like, do you understand that events could be another revenue stream for your company? It's not only do they work, but you're doing them so wrong that they could be an entirely new way for you to have a 6-figure business within your business. Yeah.
Well, to jump into the newsletter, because I just took so many great insights and documented them. I'd love to get into the more popular one, the 40 lessons that you've learned.
Yeah.
And as I was scrolling through your Instagram, but then reading through the 40 lessons, it seems there were a handful of the lessons that apply to what you've learned as you've been traveling. And so your Instagram content is, you've been traveling around the world for a long time. It seems like multiple, I think since 2017, maybe?
Yeah, 16, 17, yeah.
And you're able to do that because of Startup Social?
Startup Social is 3 years old, so not entirely. It was only this last trip that I did that was 3 months that I was making money while I was traveling.
Okay.
All the other times I have saved up a bunch of money and then, quit wherever I was at and then went and traveled for an extended period of time.
Yeah, so I'm trying to see how I can best go through these lessons. We don't have to go through all of them.
Okay. Whichever one stand out to you.
I personally, I liked a lot of them.
Yeah.
The first one that comes to mind is number 3. So suffering is not optional, but you can choose your flavor. And you made an example of blue collar and white collar jobs, and how suffering is not eliminated but transferred. Could you extrapolate a little bit?
Yeah. That was something that became very salient to me in Japan. So in Japan, there's this craftsmanship culture, like a culture of craftsmanship, right? Where it's you do a thing, it can be as specific as, and I met a craftsman who specifically makes soba noodles from scratch. And soba is a buckwheat noodle, so it doesn't have like gluten in it, right? So it doesn't stick to itself very well. So it's incredibly hard to make a noodle out of something that doesn't want to stick to itself. It takes I think it takes 7 years to be able to make them. And to be able to make a real noodle that will stick together, right? Yeah. And so you're just constantly working at this thing over and over and over again. And this guy has huge jacked forearms because he has to roll this out all day, every day. And so I went to his restaurant twice, actually. It's just him. He only works by himself and he serves it entirely by himself, right? Yeah.
Where was this? What?
This was in Kyoto, Japan.
Okay.
And he has a hard and laborious life. He farms his own buckwheat, he mills his own buckwheat, then he rolls it out right in front of you and makes it into noodles and then serves it to you and we'll have a conversation with you. His entire life is work, right? So he has a very specific flavor of suffering, which is physical. His body's getting degraded, right? But he doesn't experience the type of suffering that so many of us deal with, which is this absolute meaninglessness of your work or your life or your efforts of you moved a ton of numbers around on a spreadsheet today. How did that actually move the needle? Why does that matter at all? Yeah. These are kind of the questions you'll ask yourself at the end of the day. Did I make any kind of impact? Am I moving towards anything? And he kind of just doesn't ask himself those things because he sees it from start to finish as a process of feeding another human being, right? And delivering his mastery and his skill to somebody else. So that is when it became really salient to me that we're all just exchanging forms of suffering. Something that I think about that my dad said to me when I was really young was that he was like, you work with your mind, not with your back, right? And now I reflect on that and I'm like, a lot of these guys who work with their back they're really happy. They're really fulfilled. They find this fulfillment in physically interacting with the real world on a daily basis. as opposed to, just kind of moving nebulous things around on like a cloud on a database and whatever. And did it equate to anything? Do you actually physically, tangibly affect anyone's life today? And it's like, you can't tell, right? So you just kind of feel purposelessness. So that was kind of where I was coming from with that one.
And so this gentleman was from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
This was a lesson you learned in Japan. Another lesson was about domesticated beauty, I think, or domesticated
serenity.
And Japan was really the only place you've seen that accomplished.
Yeah. So I would describe like serenity is just like this. It is a feeling of like tranquility and peace and awe and like you're captivated by how simple and how beautiful something is. I've only ever experienced that in nature. I feel most people have only ever experienced that in nature. And I think that's why we're drawn to nature, right? Is because it's not a performance. It's just kind of quiet and beautiful and contemplative and serene, right? So it is serenity. In Japan, they've definitely domesticated that. So if you've ever been to a Japanese tea ceremony, you definitely know what I'm talking about here. But it's kind of like these incredibly intentional movements that they'll do, like while they're making the tea. And it's like they'll like lift up the spoon and then they'll take a handkerchief, they'll unfold the handkerchief, they'll wipe the spoon, they'll refold the handkerchief, then they'll put it down and then they'll like dip the spoon in to get the matcha. And it's so performative and it's so concentrated and it's so not rushed. It is true mastery, right? And that is in so many areas there that I've like in knife making, this soba guy as well, who's making noodles. And it's just so, it looks not effortful. And I think it has to do with the level of mastery and the amount of times that they've done this thing. But it's really beautiful and it's so calming to watch. Yeah.
I'm assuming you were saying that it goes to various other vocations. So like the landscape of Japan as well, like just different environments, like the actual physical environment and how they construct the landscaping. I'm assuming it has beauty. I mean, I've seen pictures. I've never been.
Yeah.
I've heard great things by Tim Ferriss. He talks about Japan a lot.
Yeah.
Another lesson that I really enjoyed was wisdom and wealth have rarely gone hand in hand. The wisest people in human history lived simple, rural, and austere lives. They often lived in or near poverty. How did you recognize this? Was it through books or was it through a combination of books and?
Yeah, this was a lot of reflecting on books and the people that we derive wisdom from. So if you think about like who are philosophers, there's only a handful that I could think of that were like business people, right? A lot of them were monks, right? We draw a lot of wisdom from monks. And like, what is the life of a monk, right? It's they go around, they stare at a wall for 8 hours, they sweep the ground, they eat this little simple food, they do, it's pretty much chores, right? But somehow they've derived all of the deepest life lessons from doing chores, right? So I think there's two ways that you can kind of go about this. And I don't know if you've ever read The Alchemist, but this is something that I think about a lot, which is that you have the Englishman and then you have the boy, right? So the Englishman carries around all of his books and he's trying to learn the secrets of the world by reading books. And the boy just studies the desert. And they both get to, according to The Alchemist, the character, the alchemist, they're both gonna get to this level of alchemy and this level of enlightenment. But it's gonna take the Englishman quite a bit more time. So it's, can you derive the lessons that we can learn, all the lessons that are out there from just observing the natural world and observing, doing those chores that like the monks do all day long, just doing chores. Can you observe the natural lessons? And if not, you can get them from books too. But one is this really, really, really long journey that's going to take you quite a bit of time. And then the other is going to take you quite a bit of boredom, right? You cannot be overstimulated and also be paying attention to the nuances of the world.
Yeah. And I mean, I would, reflecting on this, I think maybe it's a nice little combination of books and having time to just be aware and place attention on things. Yeah, because you can step away from, refine your consumption habits from saying, okay, no more social media, but I'm reading all these books and just never end. Like Naval Ravikant, he recommends, and this is after reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss and then also the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, I just started reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. But then I literally would pick up, and I still do this to this day sometimes. I'll pick up a book, finish it, and then almost immediately pick up another book.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, I think I'm a pretty quick learner. So I think that my imagination is attaining the wisdom or the lessons learned in the book as I'm reading it. But I think it's sometimes good to pause and just really reflect on the most valuable, or at least to you, what you found, like morsels of just truth or value from that book, instead of just like, okay, let me just read, because I know that if I just keep reading and reading and reading, I'm going to be super intelligent. But then it's like you can get overstimulated and you can become confused by your perception of the world and reality can be all over the place if you do that too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I were to, there's one lesson.
We can do as many as you want, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's one lesson that would, I think, bounce off that pretty well. Best books I've ever read have had more to do with the time in my life that I've read them than the actual contents of the book. I agree with this so much.
Yes.
I'm 30 now, and when I started to really pursue through the inertia of maybe a painful moment in my life, it was through the discovery of different books. It started off with Tim Ferriss's podcast. The first podcast, I think, episode I ever listened to was Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins. And then I bought Tim's book because I was blown away. I was like, podcasts are awesome, and this is a great episode to start off with. And his books, Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors, he's so organized with everything.
Yeah.
And he, at the end of both of those, like encyclopedias, essentially, because like what they are is just like an encyclopedia of some of the like hard-hitting points from all the guests that he's had on his podcast. And then he has at the very end of each of those encyclopedias, if you will, top or the most mentioned books. I think the Bible was the top one, and then it just like goes downwards. And so I was like, okay, I just started buying books, and I would read and read and read. And so I would pick books based off of my natural curiosity. And at that time, my natural curiosity was to maybe alleviate emotional pain, become more attuned to my emotions in a more intelligent way. Or maybe it was understanding how to be a better individual within the context of working at a startup or whatever it may be. So I really resonated with that. And I was wondering if you had anything to really detail on that lesson there.
Yeah, I mean, so this is why I think book recommendations fall flat a lot, especially the ones that you give to your friends.
Yeah.
Right? Is because you'll be in a specific part of your life, going through a specific experience or needing to hear something from somebody. And then you go, wow, this was it. This hit. This resonated with me at this time. This other person that I love might want to feel that same feeling that I was, right? And so you send it to them, and then either they don't read it, or they read it and it doesn't really hit or resonate with them, or the worst case scenario is they're like, you're trying to give me advice on like how to live my, that definitely does happen.
Yeah.
So when I think about the reason why some books hit people at a specific time and others not, it's definitely because of the personal experience that they're going through at that moment. when I think about some of the books that are most profound to me, the second or third time you read them, it could be because the information is stale, but I think the second or third time you read them, they don't resonate as much because maybe you've kind of grown or overcome that need that when you first read it addressed. But yeah, that's why I take lists like that with a grain of salt, because I know that they're really personal, right?
Yeah.
They're really, really personal to not only the individual, but to the time in the life of that individual.
So I suppose if you're trying to advance your skills of being a good book recommender, you would need to assess the person's personal standpoint.
Yeah, and you need to know them really well.
And you'd have to ask good questions about them and know them well.
Yeah, you need to be very well read, and then you need to know that person and what's going on in their life at the moment. And I'm not super good at book recommendations.
I was just gonna ask what were some of your favorite. Well, just for you though. What were some of the most personally impactful books in your life?
Right. Okay. Alchemist for sure. This will be a weird list. Alchemist for sure. 48 Laws of Power.
Okay.
That one I feel extremely weird recommending to people.
I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, because people associate it with being extremely Machiavellian, like extremely manipulative and trying to use people. And I view it much more as like it's much more of a historical document of how people did manipulate people over the course of history, which I find much more interesting as like a novelty and as a understanding how the world works or worked than like an instruction manual on how to manipulate. Some of the stuff's like super conniving and potentially outdated, but the stories are incredible. Yeah. And it's written by Robert Greene. He's an incredible author.
Great, yeah.
4 Hour Work Week had, I'm sure everybody says that, had such a huge impact on my life. And you could see like a lot of the traveling and a lot of the like digital nomadism that I did was impacted by that. One of the funny things is like now this full circle thing of like, do I kind of resent that?
Why? Why would you resent it?
Because as I've gotten older, and you can see it trending with my behaviors now. So I went from, if you look on my Instagram, you see all of this traveling that I did over the course of, the past 7 or 8 years. And then you see I have this business that's pretty much about building this big happy family community, right? And it's like one is definitely the byproduct of the other. I think that every digital nomad that I've ever met really just wants they just want somewhere that feels like home. And they're just traveling throughout the entire world trying to find that place that feels like home. Every single digital nomad wants to not be a digital nomad.
I think one of the lessons here is like, all my friends that are from my hometown that stayed in their hometown, have a family, have a house, got married and whatnot, are doing what they're doing. And then all my friends that left their hometown for like a career hierarchy pursuit now want a family, house, and marriage.
Yeah. I think about this often. Like there's like the long way and the short way to everything. And it's like, is there a better route? There's a quicker route.
I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I would say for me, because I'm from Massachusetts, moving to Austin in my subjective perspective was a huge net win.
Yeah.
And also waiting before I dived into marriage. I had a 2.5 year relationship, and I knew just like through the wisdom of just tuning into myself, like this isn't going to work. And so I dropped it, which was painful, but thinking, for me, like making that decision, waiting and becoming a healthier person, moving to Austin has really helped with that.
Yeah.
Community, actual, fitness and health and whatnot, like the resources of sauna and whatnot. And then, just different like people like yourself and curious minds and perspectives. And I'm not saying you couldn't find that where I'm from, but I think I would have potentially stayed in my own bubble mentally and physically. But yeah, I think people can also, they can make the path longer, and it might not be to the best of their
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought more than anything, it was just curious, right? It was just a curious thing that I was observing. I have these super ambitious friends who, and it's not so much about moving away once. It's about this kind of concept that like Seneca touched on, which is like this wayward mind that just keeps moving and moving and keep trying to find something, and it's like you just kind of never find it, right? But the big twist for me was I would look at my friends who stayed in the little small town that I'm from, and they have a house, they have kids, they're super happy, they have a wife, they have their job, and it all seems to work out. But you live in San Francisco, you work at, Google, you make $300,000 a year, but for some reason you can't buy a house, you can't afford to have kids, it's not the right time, you can't find anybody who is willing to make the time to date you. And it's like, wait a second, my friend who's a pool guy in Florida was able to make all this work, but you, who is like this extremely smart, Ivy League developer at Google, can't make it work. It's like, I think we overcomplicate stuff sometimes, right?
Yeah, over intellectualizing things.
Yeah, and more than anything, it's not there's a right way to live your life, there's a wrong way to live your life. It's better to go the more direct route. No, it's none of that. It was just, this is a curious thing that I just started to observe, because mostly I used to like poo-poo on these people. I used to be like, you're really going to stay in Orlando, Florida. You're really going to live here forever. You're going to work. You're going to be like a real estate agent or whatever it was, like in Orlando, Florida, like you're never going to move. And it's like, they're happy. They won. I'm the idiot.
Yeah, and that does, I think it will also string well with another lesson. I'm trying to find it. So let's see. I think it was pertaining to community and not moving around too much. Maybe that was that might not be one of the lessons. It might be
there's an entire post on that.
An entire post. Well, so to stay on the lessons, because we could talk about so much.
Yeah.
You had a simple one, number 8, which is my favorite number. Despite my best intentions, I've rarely learned a lesson the easy way.
Yeah.
How
did I elaborate on that at all?
No.
Yeah, that's a nice one, right? It's just a
Can you elaborate?
short little one-liner. No, I mean, like, I think about just the most salient example is like, I'm 3 years old. We go to like Kobe Steakhouse, right? And this is like my dad's favorite example to bring up ever. We go to Kobe Steakhouse. He's like, don't touch the metal thing. It's hot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, psst, right? And it's like, burn my hand.
Yeah.
Never touched it again, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that happens every single year, every single day of my life, where it's somebody told you the thing, you don't believe the thing. And so you had to learn the lesson the hard way. What I've been getting pretty good at now is just believing people. Like it was kind of like a joke post on Twitter the other day where I was just like, how I saved $350 on an Oura ring. And it was like, I went through this whole thing of like, everybody knows that when you get an Oura ring, the first thing people tell you is that drinking really messes with your sleep. And then I was like, so here's the twist. Instead of buying an Oura ring, I just stopped drinking. And it's like, that's how I saved $350 in an Oura ring.
And more.
Yeah.
You're saving on.
No, yeah, it's exactly.
Spending on drinking.
Yeah, but the whole thing was like this joke of like, if there is this common wisdom, maybe just believe it. Like I don't need to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like, okay, I'm not going to drink this whole year. And what's going to change, right? As opposed to like buy the thing, realize that it's bad, see that it's bad, do something about it, don't do something about it.
Yeah, it goes back to like overcomplicating things. Yeah. Okay. So be careful of making money online.
Yeah.
I work for a startup. It is a W-2, and there are some constraints, and that narrows my focus. But still working remotely, always working behind a screen. You can have 50 tabs open and do different things. The extrapolation on this was making money online is one of the most thrilling and utterly distracting. And when the utterly distracting is what I find is like hits me the most impactfully, because I think I've overcomplicated my life through the distractions online. That being the feed, the feed of Twitter, the feed of Instagram, all of the articles, and it just seems to be overcomplicating things. And and then it continues. You can easily lose sight of what really matters when money and effort are divorced.
Yeah.
How did you learn that with Startup Social, or before that?
That was a hard way. Startup Social thing. Yeah, that was a Startup Social thing. And I'm still in that right now. This is one of those lessons that it's one of those things that you know and you recognize, but you're not exactly executing on it as well as you'd like to. This is hard because it's like video games and gambling and real money all combined, right? Yeah. It's all bundled into one. So the most important thing that I continue to do is write long form for the newsletter. I believe that because of what we touched on earlier with it's the filtration system to make sure that the community is very aligned, right? So the longer I wait to publish something new and the less frequently I publish, the more people who are in the community that are not aligned, right?
Okay.
So any distraction from that is kind of detracting from the mission of the business. What's a distraction from that? Selling event tickets, right? Like posting stuff on Twitter to try and get more followers so that I can sell more all of these things that are numbers going up on a screen that feel good, that you can compare yourself to somebody else on. And that can trick you very easily into thinking that you're doing work when you're really not doing work and you're really just on Twitter, right? That is a really hard one for me right now, is the money online and making sure I'm doing what's most important for me to be doing. It's really, really hard. I am definitely working on that.
Yeah.
Because you can get distracted into, the biggest thing is you can fool yourself into thinking that you're doing work. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I try to post a micro clip of each episode, so like one per weekday, and then Saturday I post a sneak preview of like the upcoming one, and so I'm posting once per day, maybe twice per day, and you can get lost in the algorithm of these social media apps. They pull you in. The first post, like if I pull up Instagram, the first post, I mean, they've designed it so that you stay on it. And I use I've had to utilize OneSec, which is an app that just blocks all these apps that you can create like an algorithm on your phone, like just to block Twitter. You can block Instagram and Facebook, and so that has been helpful to train. But you can easily start creating content and being on the app and posting stories, and it's like you're not really doing any work.
But it feels like you're moving the needle. That's the thing. That's the tricky part.
And if I post the content and that's all I do, like I create the content outside of it, I'm just doing that in a software application, and then I post it, and that's it. And then I shut off like everything. I think that's moving the needle to me, because it's been a huge, putting these short form pieces of content are what moves the needle for collaborating with other people through Instagram. So if you're open to it, like what I do with other guests is like I invite them to be a collaborator, so it shows up on both their feeds. So then that helps with oh, Shane Larson podcast. Let me check that out. Let me subscribe.
Smart.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can get lost. You can absolutely get lost. And I feel that a part of maybe the overcomplication of my, like, or certain aspects of my life that I've overcomplicated is because I spend too much time obtaining too much information from these apps that are designed to make you addicted to it.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, just wait until this moment is when you post something like you literally post a clip and then money goes into your bank account.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, duh, I'm going to keep posting more clips.
Right.
Right. And then it's like, so you just cha-ching, $5, these little amounts, but it is happening. It's kind of like a, like a lab rat going in for like a little bit more food.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, that's just kind of like this. I want to do things that do this, right?
Yeah.
That really, really actually move the needle. And if you're just focusing on these little ticks all the time, you're never going to actually put in the level and the amount of concentrated work to do. That's like if you were to just be publishing clips and never record a full podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Is like, I need to sit down and record the full podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ultimately too. Yeah, I really love. I love Lex Friedman. I think he's obviously very well known, big podcaster, and I want to emulate him, or I strive to emulate him, because he's not one to just. I think he probably makes revenue off of other means, because sometimes he doesn't post for a long time, just like full episodes, and he's not doing that much micro content. But his conversations are awesome in my view, and to not be lazy with my vocabulary, awesome by means of he's intertwining the exchange of consciousness on the subject of cutting edge technology, and then he's able to not just, because his profession is like robotics, right? But he's also able to utilize his profession, and then he can talk about that, and then he can also go into just like socioeconomics with communism and have debates. Like he had a debate with he coordinated or did a debate with Ben Shapiro and Destiny, and so anyways, like he's able to have a niche, but then really have these long form 3-hour conversations that really I think are stimulating and useful for humanity.
Yeah, so it sounds like his activities that move the needle for him is making sure that his brain is sharp.
Yes.
Right? And making sure that he is tuned in and that he is aware of nuance in conversation, right? So if he were to forego that to do the micro clips or whatever, sure, he might be even more popular, but he's undermining the very thing that makes him Lex Friedman, which is these really compelling conversations. So that is where I'm at right now, where I feel like I'm undermining the thing that makes me at trying to, build a bigger audience.
Yeah, it's been I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
It's been super frustrating for me. Well, I would say frustrating. It's been a challenge.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting challenge, and it's great to go through this challenge to learn and then be able to automate what I need to automate or pay attention. Like, yeah, to I'm essentially what's happening with the micro content is that you are sacrificing the clarity of mind and to be able to maintain focus and to have a sharp mind. If you're constantly creating micro content, and which sucks you into the apps, and your attention's getting all over the place, and so yeah, it's tough.
I think it's a wave. And you gotta kind of ride the wave. So
I think the beginning. Beginning. The foundation for me is like, okay, once I start making revenue, I can then automate this. I can still control what I put out for content, but I can leave that for other people to create, spend all the time, and then I can sculpt my own mind and whatnot. So,
yeah.
But it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge.
And I think it's good to have people to look up to that you're kind of emulating, because where you have like Lex Friedman, I'm sure you know Ryan Holiday, right?
Yeah.
So I really like the way that he thinks about writing, and you can clearly see there's cycles. I mean, whenever I see an author all of a sudden pop back onto social media when they haven't been on for a while, I'm like, there's a book coming.
Yeah.
Like there's a book coming out.
Yes.
Because That's not what they do.
Yeah.
Right? They write. So as soon as I start seeing them do social media, I go, oh, it's time to sell, right? It's time to sell that thing that I was writing. So if by having those role models of understanding that there's a cadence to this whole thing, and it's not just like sell, write, sell, write, sell, write, sell. It's like write for an extremely long period of time, write something that's meaningful and train your brain, and then promote that thing. And I think I need to incorporate that kind of cadence a little bit more.
And from something that comes from Naval Ravikant, you can, when it comes time to selling the long form content, your books or whatever it may be, maybe it's my conversations or whatever, the sell part can be a fun game where you're trying to articulate in more simple and concise bite-size form.
Yeah.
To really challenge you to see if you actually know what you wrote.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a, instead of like thinking, oh, I'm just having to market and sell, it's like, no, this is an opportunity for you to step on using this amazing device that we have to then kind of consolidate everything and see how much you've learned.
Yeah.
From what you typed out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got there's so much that I want to talk about, and I want to be mindful of your time. I'm wondering if we should stay with the lessons or if we should move on.
Dude, you have me. I'm
cool, man.
However long you're willing to go.
Cool. The one that made me laugh, because I'm a victim to this. You're not terrible with names, you just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yes.
And honestly, whenever, so there are multiple moments where we like, I'll see someone that I've met before, we both forget our names. So it's just like, okay, cool. Other times people will remember my name and I will not. And I just like, I've always been like, oh yeah, I'm bad with names, but subconsciously, no, I'm not. Yeah. It's that I didn't, like, I know that I didn't care enough and that's okay. I mean, like, it's the human memory, the human mind has a finite amount of bandwidth, and you're not going to be able to remember everything. So I think that that was a funny lesson to go over.
Yeah. It's kind of like a little jab. It is something that I've gotten a lot better at.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think like you don't go on a date with somebody and forget your date's name like halfway through, right? Yeah. It's like you remember it because it's important.
That's bad of you, dude.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's two, and then maybe we'll move on to something else.
Sure.
For the first time in my life, I want to believe in God. And the details on this lesson was every civilization in every era from every corner of the earth has believed in some form of divinity. Abstaining from this practice disconnects you in a real way from the whole of humanity. How does abstaining from believing in something higher than yourself cause you to be disconnected and what do you mean by in a real way from humanity?
I mean, like in it, yeah. So this is something that I went to school for anthropology, right? So for the study of human beings, I literally I was seconds away from becoming an archaeologist. I worked in Ethiopia at an archaeological site for 3 months, right? I was like digging up fossils for 3 months. And I've always been absolutely fascinated by the story of humanity and by what makes us tick, why we are the way that we are, why we interact with each other the way that we do, why some people on the other side of the world interact in a very different way, right? So when I see things that permeate many cultures over the course of almost the entirety of human history, I think throwing those things out carelessly is a mistake. I think that's a mistake. I think there are a lot of things that are very old that deserve more respect than they get because they've served us for such a long time. This was something that I was thinking about this morning. It's this concept of Chesterton's fence. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I have, yeah. But so the very short story is like, just imagine you go out to this field, you buy this, you buy this property, and there's a gigantic fence around it, right? The first thing that you say is like, oh, let's tear down this giant fence. Why is this here? And then it's worth considering that somebody else who owned this land before you thought that it was worth constructing this massive fence around this area. So maybe instead of just carelessly saying, let's tear it down, maybe you should dig into why it was built in the first place, right? And that's a lot of what I think of religion. That's a lot of what I think of that's what I think about a lot of very old institutions and a lot of things that have existed a lot longer than we have and our parents have and our countries have. Like the United States is 250 years old, right? Something like that. Yeah, 250 years old. There are things that have existed quite a bit longer than that, right? And we think that the United States is very real, right? And we're not just willing to destroy the United States, right? But we are willing to destroy some entirely other institutions that we just don't see the purpose anymore. And is it because there is no purpose, or is it because we are refusing to look into why that has served us in the past? Religion definitely falls into that bucket for me of seeing that for 10,000, 20,000, I don't know, years, we have believed that there is something else besides us, right? That there is something bigger than human beings, that we're not the apex of reality, right? And I think for me, going deeper into that and exploring that and becoming a participant in the story of humanity, I think that is a worthy pursuit for me right now.
Same. And I'm trying to do that.
I know a lot of people are. I have 2 friends since moving to Austin who are trying out a different church every single Sunday in the attempt to find one that really speaks to them, right?
Yeah, I'm currently looking into the Santo Daime.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's not well known. It's actually a pretty new religion too, but and I'm studying more about this religion, so I don't want to, I don't want to be inaccurate with its foundings, and but it was founded by a 6'7" African American in the jungles of the Amazon.
Okay.
And it incorporates the ingestion of ayahuasca.
Okay.
And there's specific prayers that go into it, which I believe call in Christ consciousness, which you can ask just by those couple of sentences, you could say, well, what are the effects of drinking ayahuasca all the time, or at least a few times per year? What do you mean by Christ consciousness? Like, what does that even entail within the human experience? And so it just it gravitated into my life without me really. Maybe I subconsciously or unconsciously prayed for it, but it just came into my path. And so I'm diving into it because it's been profound.
Yeah.
Like absolutely profound. Like, ingesting something like that is powerful. I mean,
Is this how you practice that religion?
Well, so I've done 5 total ceremonies, 2 specific retreats. And you can also, I think you can still pray, and you don't have to always drink, the DMT infused plant medicine. But there are some people that, they'll have it, in the Amazon where it was originated. They drink at least once per month, or twice per month, or even more. And I mean, based off of my brief observations, some of these people are just extremely virtuous, grounded. They see you for where you are at, saintly, if you will. I don't know how to really put a word to it, but that's where my curiosity peaks, because I've had so many continuous or overlapping parts of the conversations through the podcast that are like, be careful with ayahuasca, doing it so much. And I absolutely understand that side of it. But this religion is something that came into my purview that I'm pretty interested in. And so I don't know, if I'll follow it for sure. It's just beginning. It could lead to me just being on the normal Christian route or Buddhist, who knows? But specifically with the Santo Daime, there's the Christian cross, but there's 2 horizontal crosses because they believe that Christ consciousness has come back to earth through this medicine, which is pretty fascinating. And based off of my 5 ceremonies, the states of consciousness that I've reached is indescribable. And so there's something to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to it. And don't get me wrong, like once you need to integrate it, right? You need to be able to integrate what you go through. And it is very, very powerful, and it's not for the faint of heart. But I just relayed what my potential, where I'm like looking into when it comes to exploring. I'm wondering where your exploration is right now. I'm always curious to hear if you feel like unless you don't want to share.
Not sure. I probably lean towards Christianity for a few reasons.
It seems like the dominating religion around the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think Islam is though.
Oh, Islam.
I think just by sheer numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I think. But I think I would lean more towards Christianity, one, because like it's definitely the dominating religion in the West. And so much of our society is underpinned by, like a Christian belief system, intentionally or unintentionally. And so many people that I know who I look up to, they practice Christianity as well. So my brother converted to Christianity maybe 8 years ago. He's one of the kindest people I know. Yeah. He's one of the best people I know. And who he was before and who he was after he became a practicing Christian is a night and day different person. Yeah. And he's my younger brother, and I definitely look up to him.
Okay. What's interesting is when you said converted to Christianity, I was watching a podcast with Tim Ferriss and John Vervaeke. Do you know who John Vervaeke is?
I do not.
Oh
know.
My God, dude, he's a fascinating human being. I think you would like him. I can send you
sure.
his series on YouTube. He created a YouTube series called The Meaning Crisis, and he has this art of flowing. Like he is in the state of flow when he does these lectures. But he wraps in like all of these different Western philosophical thinkers and also Eastern, and then also dives into modern reality of like people not finding a purpose. It's really good.
Yep.
But in the podcast episode with Tim, he was originally Christian. His family created a lot of traumatic events that involved maybe dogmatic aspects of Christianity or just religion. And so he converted out of it. And now he's either in the Buddhist or the Tao, which is an Eastern spiritual practice. And so I just can't help but feel that there is, there have been multiple ascended masters of various different times and places around the world that have been able to embody and maybe tune themselves in their consciousness to a higher state, if you will. I don't know. This seems to be more and more becoming measured by science. I think it's David Hawkins' Power versus Force that started to provide ways of measuring states of consciousness from like this like pyramid, this upside down triangle that shows like, the highest state, which is like joy or whatever, bliss, whatever, and then, shame. And so I can't help but feel that Jesus Christ and the Buddha and all these different ascended masters were able to attain that state of consciousness permanently within their lifetime. And then, the human ego decides that this is the one religion. That's what I feel intuitively. But I mean, who knows? I could stick, because there are some people that they think in that similar way. And like the Santo Daime, I mean, there's a specific part in one of these books that says we understand that there are multiple paths to the divine, but we have chosen Jesus Christ as our avatar, which was like, whoa, that's your avatar or your ascended master. We just decided to choose that one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very interesting. And I think that it's, going back to like dogma. I mean, it's just want to be careful not to get into that part of the religious aspect. But anyways, I said there was 2 other lessons.
Yeah.
And then, so the second lesson, so I'm alongside a couple other friends and people in the fitness realm. I've been alcohol free for about maybe like 370 days.
Yeah, nice.
But I can't help but, what I've said continuously on the podcast and with other conversations, like I don't have this rigid attachment to I'm never drinking alcohol again. What I wanted to do was just see what happens. Just live life without alcohol. Because there were certain moments where I, abused it and have past family members that abused it. So I was like, let's just take some time to try this. And so this lesson, to continue that thought, I still do feel like there are moments with friends and family where you can have a drink or 2 or whatever, and there just seems to be this unlocking of an intimate moment. And like people call various types of alcohol spirits. And if you were to get into the certain spiritual aspects, it's like it unlocks if you believe in chakras, or Joe Dispenza talks about energy centers, which sound more scientific, energy physiologically. So maybe it's better for the Westerner to say it like that. But it unlocks the head, the crown chakra, the spirit, when you drink alcohol. And I found that there's certain points where if I have just the right amount of alcohol, and there's been multiple occasions where this has happened, that my flow of consciousness is like very flow state. But there's been many moments where I've abused it. And so the details of this lesson, well, first of all, the lesson is alcohol may be required for intimacy. After spending all of 2023 completely sober, I believe there is a level of friendship that only alcohol can unlock. And I wanted to see if you could dive into that a little bit, but also the act of cheersing as well.
Oh, yeah, sure. So that's the cheers is actually one of my favorite.
I think I've heard this before.
Yeah,
too.
It's like actually one of my favorite little like fun facts when you're drinking with somebody is like this hearty Vikings cheers, right?
Yeah.
The purpose of it is really it's a trust exercise, right? So you're supposed to cheers so hard that the beer from your drink spills over into your comrade's drink and his into yours. And if either of your cups are poisoned, you both die, right? So it's to say like, all right, neither of these are poisoned. Like I trust you, you trust me. Let's clink them really hard and see what happens, right? So at the very, at like almost and this is back to what I'm saying, of very, very old traditions, they have a purpose, right? And it's like cheersing your glass to make sure it's not poisoned is a sign of trust. And drinking with somebody is also a sign of trust because you are letting down like your guard, right?
Yeah.
You are becoming, you're in a more vulnerable state when you're intoxicated.
Yeah.
So just by its very nature, it's a thing that you do with friends. You do it in the company of friends. And then it's, the powers of drinking, they let you loosen up. Like the social, a lot of the social norms will fall away of, like work friends can become real friends once the context is shifted and now we're drinking and now we're out and there's a little bit of revelry involved, right? So yeah, like I said, I spent all of 2023 entirely sober, which was, prompted by a lot of drinking before that.
Yeah.
And I did it very much like you to see if I could do it, right? Because I had always used drinking as a social crutch. So you want to get back to my very first events. My very first event I ever did with Startup Social, I was completely wasted. I was very, very drunk because I was so afraid of being around 100 people that came to an event that I was putting on.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. So I was just like, I'm going to get drunk and I'm just going to have a good time, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized after a period of time, I was being a poor host, right? Drinking does unlock this level of fluidity to you, but it also, beyond a certain point, makes you worse, right?
Mhm.
And I wanted to
Mhm.
show up as the best version of myself to all of these things, and just the best version of myself in life. So I stopped drinking to see if I could,
Mm.
and it turns out I could, and that made me really happy. And then I said, okay, I've done things like this before where I've cut things out of my life entirely. This isn't self-control.
Mm.
Saying, so I started very, very young when I did my very first one, which was I'm not going to have any ice cream, right? And this was I
Yeah.
started when I was
Yeah.
12 years old.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have ice cream until I was 25 years old. Yes. Yeah. So, and that was when I was 25 years old. I realized this is not self-control, right? Self-control is I'm going to have ice cream once this week, one scoop,
Mhm.
right? And that's it. I'm good
Yeah.
because I'm in control,
Yeah.
right? Saying nothing or everything, that neither of those are
I
control.
agree. So yes, dude, I agree so much to this.
So
Yeah.
in 2024, I said, let's see if I can practice self-control with alcohol. And so now I am. So like, I will have a beer going out now. That was never, ever a thing before.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was always, I would drink to achieve a state, right? And then once you're in that state, you're
Yeah.
you're right. You're just kind of
Yep.
you're going down a path that's really, really hard to stop. But now it's like, okay, I can be very casual about this. And a really funny thing about moving to Austin was one of the first encounters I had here. It was like the night I was ready to start drinking again. And I went out with like my girlfriend and two other friends that we made. We went out to this restaurant and they gave us a cocktail menu. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I haven't had mezcal in a year. I love mezcal. And then the waiter comes over and they're like, what do you guys want to drink? And then somebody orders like an NA cocktail, NA cocktail, NA cocktail. And I was like, shit, I'm going to order an NA cocktail now. I got peer pressured into not drinking on my day when I was like, I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would only ever happen in a place like Austin where like it's,
Yeah.
if you want to be dry in Austin, it's very easy. You'll have so many friends who are also dry. So, yeah, it's just become a self-control thing that now, if I do want to become intimate with somebody, if I do say, hey, we went on like one of these first friendship dates, we went on 2, we went on 5, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I actually want to unlock this.
Yes.
I want to use this now as a like almost a strategic tool of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, but it's not just like a willy-nilly every weekend with everybody kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now I'm using now I'm thinking about it a lot more as a tool for intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I found that's great for me, and hopefully for some of the listeners, it's so refraining from not drinking for a long period of time. I still see like, oh, so I'm like not gonna do any of these activities, and maybe I'm still not being as intimate, you know. But I have a similar circumstance as you when you said you were drinking a lot because you were hosting, and there was maybe some fear for hosting those big social events. For me, it was like intimacy, romantic intimacy, and maybe the fear of rejection, or it could be that and other aspects that are even deeper based off of certain past experiences. And so now it's like I've gone out and I've gone on dating. Like I'm actually going to a dating event soon, and to just really sit there and still see if you're able to dive into conversations in an intimate way without like the need for alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, it's helpful. Okay. I said those were the last 2 lessons, but I think I lied. Finding a partner is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that is true. I've been single for a while now, a few years. And a part of me has been trying to accomplish all these different things. And I've had this belief that, oh, if I have a partner, I won't be able to really fulfill the podcast full steam ahead. And then also, there's other aspects of my life that I'm like trying to improve upon. But I think that it's when you have a partner, they set you in balance a little bit more than you realize. And you might even perform better on the podcast. And they'll maybe if they love you enough, they'll let you find time to do the podcast. And other aspects of life will feel more peaceful because, there's I think his name is Makta Chia, and he speaks to sexual intimacy in the yin and the yang in the Tao and all these other things, like all related to like male sexuality. And more and more I'm finding that I think as I like do all these personal improvement, fitness, spirituality conversations, that still may continue, but it could shift into a much different direction if I were to get into a romantic relationship. And so, I think it's important for everybody to find someone that they love and in the romantic field. I'm wondering how it has helped you in your life, because I think I saw you've been with your partner for 14 years. Right?
Yeah. We've been together since high school. We went to college together. She went to grad school.
Mm-hmm.
We've stuck together the entire time.
Yeah.
It is so important, and I don't know if I can articulate all the ways in which it is, because a lot of them are really unexpected. For me specifically, she made me a lot better of a person, not only just like morally or emotionally, but like, I mean, on paper, she definitely made me a better person.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated high school with a 1.98. So you can't graduate with a 1.98. My dad called the principal and was like, just let this kid through. Like, you don't want him in your school anymore. Like, just get him out. My name wasn't written in the graduation program, right? Like, that's how not real it was. And yet she was dating me, right? And she was, like a one of those 4.5 students who like has over, like insane, like went to Duke for her PhD to become a scientist kind of thing. Yes.
Wow.
And she elevated me all these steps along, where it was very much like I'm going this way. Like, if you want to be a part of it, keep up kind of thing. And that was never explicitly said. It was always this like, you can be whoever you want to be and I'll still love you. But the way that I took it was very much that of like, I'm going to this school. Like, if you want to go to college with me, get into this school. And I was just like, I barely graduated high school. How do I do that? So it gets your brain thinking like, okay, how do I do this? Now that I have this ultimate carrot, right, in front of me, it's like, who do I have to become to be worthy of this person, right? And so it really spurs you along. So a lot of people will echo the same sentiment that you just had of like, almost as if the potential of a partner might get in their way, right? Of who they want to become. But it's like, this person could actually make you something better than you've ever, than any dream you had for yourself, right? And that's very much what happened with me.
So how did you get into the same college? If you had
Oh yeah. So what I did was in Florida, they had this program where if you got an AA at a community college, you could go to a Florida school. Like a Florida college, not any Florida college you wanted to, but A. So if you did all right and you got an AA, you would go to like one of the lower ones.
Okay.
But if you like crushed it, you could potentially get into where she wanted to go, which was University of Florida.
Okay.
And she got in, and I 100% did not get in. I maybe applied 4 times, right? It was like it was so much a learning process of like, to be a complete failure in school, it's like it's not only are you a failure at school, but it's like you don't understand like due dates, and you don't understand like detail-oriented work, like those little tiny things of like following through, making sure that things are happening, like not just trusting like an administrator when they said they submitted your application kind of thing, right? So I applied 4-5 times until I finally got into University of Florida with her. So I graduated 2 years after like I should have graduated. But it was all because I really deeply believed that if at that early stage in our relationship, if we were to have separated, it probably wouldn't have worked out. I didn't really know anybody who made a long-term relationship work when they were 18 years old. So I was like, if I don't go with her, this isn't going to work out. So it was just like, that was my main priority.
Wow.
And then it's totally just kind of been this upward spiral of like, I've always kind of just followed along because I've thought what she's doing is so much more important than what I'm doing. I mean, she's a cancer scientist, right? So it's like just support her along the way. And in supporting her, I've become like the best version of myself. Me at 18 years old could not have imagined me right now. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So to get away from the lessons,
Sure.
you had at least, I think I read a half dozen of your essays, and your essays are impactful, but they're not too long. And so, yeah, I think I think the one that we could touch upon that I really enjoyed was recovering your genius. How presence shapes history and innovation. And we've already touched upon this topic a little bit through maybe overcomplicating things through reading so many books or over intellectualizing. But this is the, wake up, check Instagram, then email and all of that, and Netflix, and then you're just like crushed by the gravity of your eventual death. Go to sleep. I was wondering if you could touch upon this newsletter and how one could recover their genius, because it's not easy nowadays with all the distractions and the infinite amount of information that we have. And people might think like, if I just read this amount of books, like this crazy amount of books, I'll be this smart, and that doesn't always come with wisdom as well. Or I would argue that if you're constantly stimulating yourself, you can't find presence, wisdom might not be attained. So wherever you would like to begin with this newsletter, and I think you mentioned,
could you either show it to me or like just jog my memory on some of the like main paragraphs?
Yeah, for sure. So, this is the one where the intro to the newsletter was like, wake up, check Instagram, then email, coffee, headphones in, what's the news, Twitter, head to work.
Yeah.
Then you go on to say, most of our days are a series of short, choppy beats like this, a succession of events, one after the next. There's no momentum building in the distance. There's no bigger goal that we're heading towards, which makes those final seconds of the day, the ones where we actually contemplate our purpose on planet Earth, so utterly crushing. Instead of being awash with purpose, it feels as if we're cramming each minute of each day with another activity, another distraction. And this has degraded more than just our quality of life. It has degraded our genius. And then you go on to say Leonardo da Vinci. How is it that one man could lay the foundation for civil engineering, chemistry, geology, geometry, hydrodynamics, mathematics, optics, physics, and zoology? How one man, an artist no less, could make such profound contributions to so many disparate fields of science.
Yeah. So this one, I'm not exactly sure the takeaway that I was trying to give in this one specifically, but I know what I'm thinking of right now.
Go ahead right now. And then
I know what I'm thinking the takeaway is right now is that we're not bored enough. That's probably where I was going with that, or where I would take that right now, is that we're not nearly bored enough. Somebody asked me the other day, like, what is your writing process? And I said, it's effectively, you have this period in the beginning where you're reading the whole time. You're trying to get new ideas. You're just kind of kicking up the dust in your brain. You're bringing in new, just, there's no purpose to any of it. It's all just going in there, right? But then you have to actually do something with all of that. And if you just keep reading, the dust is still kicked up. It's you're still adding more to this. So you have to now go from this very sporadic, very serendipitous state to this very clear state right before you're about to write. And this is where you draw some kind of novel connection, where you take the information that you just learned and you make it meaningful, right, to somebody else. And you synthesize it through your particular lens of how you see the world. And you can't do that if you are still having things come in, if you're still taking on influence of other people, because you want to get to your story that you want to tell, right? With the information that you just learned. So how do you do that? And it's like this Bruce Lee quote that I think of, which is like, how do you make muddy waters still, right? Or how do you make muddy waters clear, rather? And it's like they have to become still, right? You can't like sift out all the sand. It's just wasted motion. When really the easiest thing for you to do is just let the glass stand there. Let it stand for 2 hours, for 3 hours. All the sediment will come to the bottom and will be completely clear where you're supposed to go. So you have to really become bored in the second stage of writing. And that's probably where, back to our conversation previously, that's probably where I'm failing. That's where this the game of playing money online gets in the way, because it's not boring. It's like really fun. So you have to let the dust settle by being very bored. There's a few ways you can do that. I mean, like walking. A lot of people would walk without your phone or without a podcast in your ears. It has to be mind-numbingly boring. Waiting in line. Like today, I waited in line for 40 minutes at the farmer's market, and I didn't check my phone like the whole time, because it's like a practice of being observant and letting those patterns come to you. Because what happens is, like, your brain, I feel, wants to be in this certain level of distraction at all times. It wants to be stimulated to a certain level at all times. And if it's not, something really magical happens as a writer, is it will start making shit up. It will start making things up to distract you. And a lot of those are really interesting things. They're like little thought experiments, or they're little imaginary ideas. And then you're like, wow, that was a great idea. I just came up with that. That was in here. You just take a note of that, right? For other people, that could be like a little bit too much. For people with anxiety, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Is like when your brain finally gets still, exactly what I was saying at the end of that article, you start contemplating your mortality before bed, right? Yeah. Because there's nothing in front of your eyeballs, and it's just now truly black. And you're like, okay, what do I think about? And then it's just like, what is the most distracting thing possible? Oh, my death, right? So I definitely, strategic boredom and training your boredom muscle is definitely an important thing. I don't know if that's where I went with this article, but that's where I would take it now.
Yeah, you went along the lines of that. A moment of quiet intentionality, a moment of presence sparked an obsession that would last decades. Yeah. A simple walk undistracted by conversation or books or news lead to some of our most foundational understandings of avian and human anatomy. That's to Leonardo da Vinci. That was where you went with that.
And that's one of my favorite things about writing, is like, what an absurdly roundabout way for me to just say, like, go on a walk, right? Yeah. I think that's the best thing about stories, is because if you just say it, if you just put out a tweet that says, go on a walk, get off your phone, go on a walk, no one will listen to you.
Right.
But if you write this big story of how Da Vinci was such a genius, and how was he a genius? Oh, he did X, Y, and Z, and he contributed to all these fields. And what was his big genius secret? Oh, time alone. And then you're like, wow, maybe I could do that too, instead of just saying, go on a walk,
Yeah. And, in his time period, it was easier to, and maybe even almost natural to find those moments.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays it is not.
Yeah.
It is not at all.
Yeah.
It's actually, you have to be intentional with this. At least I do. And I know plenty of people, I think a vast majority of people, that are the majority of the day stimulating or distracting themselves. And it's not easy. We have this dopamine system within our brains that is constantly trying to chase more, and that can, be perpetuated by social media algorithms and gambling and TV, other media. And there was another quote from here by harnessing the ability to find nuance in the seemingly mundane, ordinary people, no smarter than you or I have been able to shape the course of history.
Right back to the monk thing. That's exactly back to the monk thing.
Yeah. So I really like that
Yeah.
because at you know, I would like to make it almost just this constant within my life to just be bored at or have these intentional, um, boring or space of mind moments versus like just overstimulating and then getting to a point where it's like pain and you're learning the hard way,
Yeah.
right? Um, cool. Well, there's another article here. Um, Lose your aim, lose yourself.
Hmm.
And this is so the subheadline is set it or someone else will for you. And I don't know if you know who Dan Coe is.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about this a lot, like creating your own content and being like you are the niche. You can use social media and the internet to create your own business. And how he says like if you don't create the product, someone will for you. Um, yeah, I get asked like what my ultimate purpose or chief aim in life is, and that continues to be in a evolving process right now. Um, what I know is that I've used the strategy and the recommendation of finding what your child self was naturally good at and skilled at,
Hmm.
and what made that child you, kick and get into gear. I was always I had a rush, and I always loved enjoying experiences with friends. Whether it was, just mischievous stuff like ding dong ditch or flashlight tag or riding our bikes downtown or whatever. I just always wanted to be with, like, I was pretty social for the most part, and I enjoyed people's perspective. And so I think that's why I finally made the decision to do a podcast about a year ago,
Mm.
because I'm good at, just speaking to many different types of people. Um, but I also think that, because I recently signed up for another Santo Daime retreat, and that tends to stir things up. What I've heard is that it can kind of, whether it's you're coming from the Western science perspective, like your subconscious mind has now changed because you know subconsciously that you signed up for something that can be really impactful and profound and powerful. But then there's the spiritual aspect that, like, as soon as you make the initiation, there's certain spiritual presence or energy, whatever you want to, guides that are starting to work with you. And since I signed up for this thing, I have been super doubtful about myself and this
Mm.
podcast. And I think it's doubt of or skepticism in which I constantly question: is this going to be even worth it in the future? Like, is technology going to exponentially change to a point where podcasts, are relevant? Blah blah blah. And like, I think that they will be. But then also, am I massaging my ego? Are my intentions and my values aligned? And did this come from a place of like a deep wound when I was a kid? And like,
Mm.
once I heal, I won't be as stimulated by doing the podcast. And I'm like, so just all these different things.
Yeah.
Just like, and that's just like a couple examples of what's crossed my mind back and forth. And so I think that's all to say that choosing your chief aim in life,
Mm.
your ultimate purpose, seems to provide direction. And in this newsletter, talking about goals and how they're not meant to be reached, it's not always meant to be reached, but it often serves simply as something to aim at. And you intertwined Bruce Lee
Mhm.
in this one.
Mhm.
And Lee's philosophy suggests that despite the clarity of his vision, goals should not be treated as a definite end. Instead, they are designed to set our aim, to provide direction to our thoughts and actions. They act as a sort of waypoint, a North Star. In this sense, our goals are an orientation. Therefore, the most perilous concession we can make is to allow someone else to set our aim for us. And there's more. Many of us still find ourselves outsourcing our goals instead of from our parents and peers. We're now assuming the goals of our employer. And so, how would you help someone find clarity with their chief aim. So I'm still doing that. I think it could be a process, but some people do know it as soon as they know pretty concretely.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good question, because what the article is and what a lot of my articles are is like, have you ever thought about this? Like, that's pretty much what they all are. Like, have you ever thought about this idea?
Yeah.
They're not like, here's what to do about it. Here's how you should fix it. Here's me saying this is the better way that you should live. Because I don't know, but I can draw a little bit from my own experience and how I think I've found mine, and that might be helpful. So, in my business that I run right now, it's all been incredibly organic. And for the longest time, I knew I wanted to own a business of some sort. I wanted to work for myself in some capacity, but I didn't know how. And so I just started doing stuff. I just started trying. Like, one of the most salient examples to me, because it's so silly, was like cat yoga. This was in college, and I went to the ASPCA, so the animal shelter in my college town, and I said, hey, I have connections to the sororities. I can get into the sororities. You got cats. Like, let's put them together. I'll host yoga, and then we'll put the cats up for adoption at the end of it. So I was kind of like pimping out their kittens, right? And they really turned it down. And I was like, on paper, I was like showing them like math for it. And I was like, you're going to make this much money and you'll never make this much money in like a whole year. And we'll never move as many kittens as you could with me. Right. It was ridiculous in retrospect. Right. But that is like how hard I was trying for just random stuff. I was just reaching for random things. And then the thing that actually took and the thing that actually hit was just the thing I did naturally, that I didn't want it to become anything else. There was no expectation of it becoming anything. It was, hey, I'm going to go to the park anyways. Want to show up? That was one of them, right? And then it was like, hey, I don't know anything about venture capital. Do you? If you don't, like, come hang out with me. And then you get some VCs to come in and they talk about what they do, right? And then now you're the startup guy. Now you're this guy who does startup events. And now 500 people come to your events. And now, like, it just keeps snowballing, all because it's, hey, I'm going to do this thing anyways. Y'all want to come or not? If not, cool. But like, I'm going to be here anyways, right? So every single event that I do is, I'm going to do this anyways. So I think if you want to find your chief definite aim, I would start by the things that you're naturally going to do anyways. And I think that those with a little bit of clarity are going to point you into that North Star direction. They're going to start, your aim is going to start to be defined. And by virtue of you saying, hey, these are the things I'm interested in and going to do anyways, nobody else is setting it for you, right? Because that was the danger of that article, was that you're being told what to do by your parents or your work or your friends, and they're leading you. So I would suggest follow what you already have this natural inclination to do, and just kind of look a little bit further down the line. Where is this going? Like, what are some potential areas that this could go in? Because at the end of the day, a goal is not a definite point, right? It's a direction. So I don't know where my business is going right now. People are like, what is your 5-year, 10-year goal, right? And it's like, I don't know. And I think it's actually way more fun that I don't know. Yeah. Because it's almost like I'm a character in a story and I'm the reader of that story at the same time, where I'm like, oh shit, where's it going? Like, where's this going to go next? What's he going to do next? Like, where is this? Because everything's unfolding in such a ridiculous manner right now, where I'm like, how is this a business? How am I doing this? Like, why are so many people showing up? Or I wonder what's going to happen if I try this. The whole thing is spurred on by curiosity. So the goals are very nebulous, but the direction is very clear, right? So I think the advice that I would give to anybody who is willing to take a little bit of a harder road is, don't be selfish now. Think as if the payday was 50 years in the future, and then do what you're going to do already. right? So you're not making any of these short-term concessions. You're not doing anything out of this scarcity of I need money right now. And then you're also not listening to anybody else's. You're not letting anybody else determine your waypoint for you.
Yeah, the thing that you would do already, even if you weren't to pursue like an entrepreneurial route, you want to make sure that that isn't destructive to your health.
Sure.
Obviously.
Yes.
And so so a quote from John Vervaeke, the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, fascinating guy, and he said at the end of Lex Friedman's podcast with him, Lex asked him, "What advice would you give to a young person?" And I loved it. Because I listened to the whole episode, and when he said this, I stopped. I replayed it, and I replayed it, and I replayed it, and then I tweeted it and tagged him, and he liked it, and I was like, "Oh, this is fucking sweet." Nice. But so the question that Lex asks is, "What advice would you give to a young person in modern day society?" And he says, "Find an ecology of practices and a community that supports them without involving you in believing things that contravene our best understood science, so that wisdom and virtue, and especially how they show up in relationships, are primary to you. This will sound ridiculous, but if you take care of that, the other things you want are more likely to occur, because what you most want when you're approaching your death is, what were the relationships you cultivated to yourself, to other people, to the world, and what did you do to improve the chance of them being deep and profound relationships?"
Yeah.
I thought
I feel like that's one of those things you have to re-listen to like 5 times to fully understand the texture of it.
In the beginning, to find an ecology of practices.
Yeah.
So like, what does that mean? I mean, what I thought at first was like, oh, I'm in the right spot because I'm doing Bitcoin, and Bitcoin. What's amazing with the company that I work for, it has like naturally attracted very virtuous people. Very smart people, and also wise, and I think that's due to the study of Bitcoin as a monetary technology. Like it branches out to everything. It's the connective tissue of humanity, and so then you speak to like economics, and it does get into religion and war and the history of, when you follow the money, it's like you follow humanity in history, and so. That was like one thing that clicked with me, was like, I think Bitcoin is the right direction, but also podcasting too. I mean, who knows? Depending on where I lead it, but we've gone for 2 hours now. I don't know if you have a time limit.
No, I don't.
We could go a little bit further if you want. So there are a couple other newsletters.
Why don't we pick one more?
One more?
Okay.
Cool. So the other one, we kind of talked about this one. So we spoke to, let's talk, because we already spoke. There's one newsletter that it's The Elegance of Doing Less, but we kind of talked about that. I think I'd like to go filling your creative reservoir. The secret to innovation. And so just to kind of give you, this is the chef.
Yeah, Rene Redzepi.
Yeah. Some people might be asking, how do I find my natural, or how do I express my own creativity? And in this newsletter, you know on a few things, and this chef and what he does and how he becomes a world-class restaurant, but they're always innovating every week, right? I can read a little bit more, or if you want to just string.
Sure, give it a little primer.
Sure. So Rene, that's how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Rene.
So Rene treats this first part of the creative process, the act of filling himself up with knowledge and ideas, very seriously. So much so that on multiple occasions, he's closed the restaurant for months on end to fill the creative reservoirs of his team. And then there's a couple other notes that I took. Let's see. To do so requires a wealth of knowledge from disparate fields. It requires gathering experiences and tools and skills in order to build a map of the territory. After all, you can't connect the dots if you can't see them. As Steve Jobs would lament, a lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences, so they don't have enough dots to connect. Creation at its essence is this connection. Namely, what we're connecting is other people's experiences with our own. In this way, both lived experience and acquired knowledge are essential to overcoming our most pressing challenges with creativity.
Yeah.
So it seems like, intertwining acquired knowledge and lived experiences.
Yeah, that's all it really is, right? It's like, I mean, that's all that this entire chain of human history is, right? It's like you learn a little bit from the people behind you, then you add a little bit with your own experience, and then hopefully you draw those connections and can share them with, the next group of people who are going to come along and experience invariably the same problems that you are, right? So much of creativity is just rehashing something with your own individual spin. That's it. Like they're really, I mean, it's like, it goes back to like, there are no new ideas under the sun, right? There's nothing new under the sun. Where it's everything is just a rehash. Everything is just another version of something else. But it's how can you just add that little bit of your experience, which is the only thing different that you could possibly add, right, to the equation. So for people who, spend forever just reading books, right? It's like you don't have anything new to add to this conversation with the author almost, right? You read their work and all you have done is read other works. It's far harder to add a contribution as opposed to you read works, but then you studied, you studied indigenous tribes in the Amazon for 12 years. Like, and then you can now, how can you relate your work there for 12 years in the Amazon to the work of Socrates and then the work of, Robert Greene and then the work of like Elizabeth Gilbert, right? It's like very disparate things. But as soon as you have your own dots to start contributing to this scaffolding of ideas, you can start building up something of your own, and you can maybe even attempt to approach a unique idea. You can get maybe a little bit closer to potentially a unique idea, which may or may not exist. But you're at least kind of making an effort, and you're participating in the conversation of humanity. So this idea of filling your creative reservoir is definitely back to this, like, let's go out and get some experiences. Like, let's go engage with the world. Let's go add some dots to this thing. And for some people, and it's obviously the advice is whatever the one that you're predisposed to, do the other one. If you really love reading books, stop. Go and meet physical people, right? So when I was like I said, I was a really bad student, right? So that means I had never read a book in all of high school, none, right? I would do like Spark Notes if anything. So when I got to college, I started seeing that like all of these CEO-y kind of guys were talking about, oh, I read 52 books a year, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, all right, so all I have to do is read 52 books a year and I'm going to be like the CEO guy. That was my logic. And I was like, I can do that. I'm going to do that. So I started doing that, right? And I did that for like 3 or 4 years straight, where I would read a new book every single week for the entire year. And I did that for many years. But I was a really quiet dude. And I didn't have many experiences to myself, right? I just had other people's experiences, so I could quote stuff from books, but I couldn't have really related it to anything real that I had done. Now, fast forward to I'm 32 years old. What am I doing? The exact opposite. I'm saying, all right, let's go out and have 30 conversations with 30 different people in 30 days, right? It's the exact opposite. Have I read at all in the past month? No. It feels really bad and awkward, and like I'm not, like I've forsaken this thing that has served me for so long, and it feels like new things aren't coming in, but I'm learning from doing and from reality and from people, and it's a very different thing, and you have to synthesize it in a different way because you can't, take notes when I guess you can, but I wouldn't like if someone was doing that when I was having a conversation with them, taking notes. So a lot of it is like this kind of like download after the fact, where I'll go into the conversation and then it's like, okay, what happened? And I kind of go through the entire thing and I try and synthesize it into something meaningful. And what did I learn from this person? What did I learn about people from this conversation? And those are things I think that books might be able to teach you, but it would be really hard.
Yeah, and as Tim Ferriss has mentioned, the good shit sticks.
Yeah.
So if you have those conversations with people, whatever, most, my guess is whatever is more valuable to you is what will help you maybe evolve forward.
Yeah.
And so whatever someone says within the conversation that you have, and the conversation can be an hour long, your mind will, I think it's like your reticular activating system will be like, okay, I remember that more so because it could apply to certain aspects of my life. And so awesome, man. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
We went for like 2 hours. And honestly, in the beginning, I was like, I don't know where this is going to, how this is going to flow and how.
Yeah, I took you down the beauty rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I haven't done that with a lot of people.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. And I'm so glad Matt introduced us.
Yeah, me too.
Because that was unexpected.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I usually invite the guests if they want. You've talked a lot, so no pressure. But if there's anything that comes that's on your heart right now that you want to relate to anybody that's listening, aside from like the topics that we've discussed, if there's anything we haven't mentioned that's on your heart, would love to offer you the opportunity.
Wow.
If not, no pressure either. Could just be like, drink water.
Friends are important. People are really important. Having people that you trust, and that you can feel comfortable around and truly rely on, is potentially one of my greatest aims in life. Right? I know what it's like to be alone, and I know what it's like to feel alone, even though you're surrounded by people. And I really wouldn't wish that on anybody. So even if it's hard, try and get out there and meet people and make relationships and practice that skill of being part of the human conversation.
Great words of advice. Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Peace.